I had not yet been put in school, so I had a lot of time in the world for Fritz. Jayanto fell silent. I looked at my watch and realized it was 9:30. It was very quiet outside. We were sitting in the drawing room of the circuit house. An oil lamp burnt in the room. I asked, "What happened to the doll?" Jayanto was still deep in thought. His answer to my question came so late that by the time I had started to think that he had not heard me at all. I had brought it to Bundi. It was destroyed here. Destroyed? How? Jayanto sighed. We were sitting out on the lawn having tea. I had kept the doll by my side on the grass. I was not really old enough to have tea, but I insisted, and in the process, the cup tilted and some of the hot tea fell on my pant. I ran outside to change and came back to find out that Fritz had disappeared. I looked around and found quite soon that a couple of stray dogs were having a nice tug of war with Fritz. Although he didn't actually come apart, his face was battered beyond recognition and his clothes were torn. In other words, Fritz did not exist for me anymore. He was dead. And then Jayanto's story intrigued me. What could possibly happen after that? I arranged his funeral, that's all. Meaning? I buried him under the deodar tree. I had wanted to make a coffin. Fritz was after all a European, but I could find nothing, not even a little box. So in the end, I buried him just like that. At last, the mystery of the deodar tree was solved. We went to bed at around 10. Our room was a large one, and our bed had been neatly made. Not being used to doing a lot of walking, I was feeling rather tired after the day's activities. Besides, the bed was very comfortable. I fell asleep barely 10 minutes after hitting the pillow. A slight noise woke me up a little later. I turned on my side and found Jayanto sitting up on his bed. The table lamp by his bed was switched on, and in its light it was easy to see the look of anxiety on his face. I asked, "What is it? Are you not feeling well?" Instead of answering my question, Jayanto asked me one himself. "Do you think this circuit house has got small animals? I mean, things like cats or mice?" "I shouldn't be surprised if it does. Why?" Something walked over my chest. That's what woke me. Rats and mice usually come in through drains, but I've never known them to climb on the bed. This is the second time I've woken up actually. The first time I had heard a shuffling noise near the window. Oh, if it was near the window, it's more likely to be a cat. Yes, but this is the part where it starts to get interesting. It's just these 2 pages, another 2 pages, and the last 2 pages. Jayanto still sounded doubtful. I said, "Didn't you see anything after you switched the light on?" "Nothing, but then I didn't switch it on immediately after opening my eyes. To tell you the truth, I felt rather scared at first, but when I did switch it on, there was nothing to be seen. That means whatever came in must still be in the room. Well, since both the doors are bolted from inside, I rose quickly and searched under the bed, behind our suitcase, and everywhere else in the room. I could not find anything. The door to the bathroom was closed. I opened it and was about to start another search when Jayanto called out to me softly, 'Shankar.' I came back to the room. Jayanto was staring hard at the cover of his quilt. Upon seeing me, he pulled a portion of it near the lamp and said, 'Look at this.' I bent over the cloth and saw tiny brown circular marks on it. I said, 'Well, these could have been made by a cat.' Jayanto did not say anything. It was obvious that something had deeply disturbed him. But it was 2:30 in the morning. I simply had to get a little more sleep, or I knew I would just keep feeling tired. And we had plans of doing a lot of sightseeing the following day. So after murmuring a few soothing words such as, 'Don't worry, I'm here with you, and who knows, those marks may have been on your quilt already when you went to bed,' I switched off the light and once more lay down. I had no doubt that Jayanto had only had a bad dream. All those memories of his childhood had upset him, obviously, and that was what had led to his dreaming of a cat walking on his chest. I slept soundly for the rest of the night. If there were further disturbances, Jayanto did not tell me about them, but I could see in the morning that he had not slept well. Tonight I must give him one of the tranquilizers I brought with me, I thought. We finished our breakfast by 9, as we had planned, and left for the fort. A car had already been arranged. It was almost 9:30 by the time we reached. Some of Jayanto's old forgotten memories began coming back again, though fortunately they had nothing to do with his doll. In fact, his youthful exuberance made me think he had forgotten all about it. There's that elephant on the top of the gate, he exclaimed, and the turrets. And here is the bed made of silver and the throne. Look at that picture on the wall. I saw it the last time. But within an hour, his enthusiasm began to wane. I was so engrossed myself that I did not notice it at first, but while walking through a hall, looking at the chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, I suddenly realized Jayanto was no longer walking by my side. Where was he? We had a guide with us. Babu has gone out on the terrace, he told me. I came out of the hall and found Jayanto standing absent-mindedly near a wall on the other side of terrace. He did not seem to notice my presence. Even when I went and stood beside him, he started when I called him by his name. What on earth is the matter with you? I asked. Why are you standing here, looking morose, even in the beautiful place like this? I can't stand it. Jayanto simply said, Have you finished seeing everything? If so, let's... Had I been alone, I would have definitely spent a little more time at the fort. But one look at Jayanto made me decide in favor of returning to the circuit house. A road through the hills took us back to town. Jayanto and I were both sitting in the back of the car. I offered him a cigarette, but he refused. Smoking kills, guys. Do not smoke. I noticed a veiled excitement in the movement of his hands. One moment he placed them near the window and on top of his lap, and immediately afterwards began biting his nails. Jayanto was quiet by nature. This odd restlessness in him worried me. After about 10 minutes, I could not take it anymore. It might help if you told me about your problem, I said. Jayanto shook his head. It's no use telling you, for you're not going to believe me. Okay, even if I don't believe you, I can at least discuss the matter with you, can't I? Fritz came into our room last night. Those little marks on my quilt were his footprints. There was very little I could do at this except catch hold of him by the shoulders and shake him. How could I talk sensibly to someone whose mind was obsessed with such an absurd idea? You didn't see anything, did you? I said finally. No, but I could distinctly feel whatever was walking on my chest had 2 feet, not 4. As we got out of the car at the circuit house, I decided that Jayanto must be given a nerve tonic or something or some such thing. A tranquilizer might not be good enough. I could not allow a 37-year-old man to be so upset by a simple memory from his childhood. I said to Jayanto upon reaching our room, It's nearly 12 o'clock. Should we not be thinking of having a bath? You go first, said Jayanto and flung himself on the bed. An idea came to my mind in the bath. Perhaps this was the only way to bring Jayanto back to normalcy. Sorry guys, my camera is not adjusting. If a doll had been buried somewhere 30 years ago, and if one knew the exact spot, it might be possible to dig the ground there. No doubt, most of it would have been destroyed, but it was likely that we'd find just a few things, especially if it were made of metal, such as buckle of a belt or brass buttons on a jacket. If Jayanto could actually be shown that that was all that was left of his precious doll, he might be able to rid himself of the weird notions. Otherwise, he would have strange dreams every night and talk about Fritz walking on his chest. If this kind of thing was allowed to continue, he might go totally mad. Jayanto seemed to like my idea at first, but after a while, he said, Who will do the digging? Where will you find a spade? I laughed. Since there is a garden, there is bound to be a gardener. And that would mean a spade. If you offered him a little tip, I have no doubt that he would have no objection to digging up a little bit of ground near the trunk of the tree at the far end of the lawn. Jayanto did not accept the idea immediately, nor did I say anything further. He went and had his bath. After a little bit of persuasion, at lunch he ate nothing except a couple of chapatis with meat curry, although I knew he was quite fond of his food. After lunch, we went and sat in the cane chairs on the veranda that overlooked the garden. There appeared to be no one else in the circuit house. There was something eerie about the silence that afternoon. All we could hear was the noise made by the monkeys sitting on the gulmohar tree across the cobbled path. Around 3 p.m., we saw a man come into the garden carrying a watering can. He was an old man. His hair, mustaches, and sideburns were all white. Will you ask him or should I? At this question from Jayanto, I raised a reassuring hand and went straight to the gardener. After I had spoken to him, he had looked at me rather suspiciously. Clearly, no one had ever made such a request. Why, Babu? He asked. I laid a friendly hand on his shoulder and said, Don't worry about the reason, I'll give you 5 rupees. Please do as you're told. He relented, going so far as to give me a salute accompanied by a broad grin. I beckoned to Jayanto, who was still sitting on the veranda. He rose and began walking towards me. As he came closer, I saw the pallor on his face. I did hope we could find at least some of the parts of the doll. The gardener in the meantime had fetched a spade. The 3 of us made our way to the deodar tree. Jayanto pointed at the ground about a yard from the trunk of the tree and said, Here. Are you sure? I asked him. Jayanto nodded silently, like this. How much did you dig? At least 8 inches. The gardener started digging. The man had a sense of humor. As he lifted his spade, he asked if there was a hidden treasure under the ground, and if so, whether he would be prepared to share it with him. We would be prepared to share it with him. I had to laugh at this, but Jayanto's face did not register even the slightest trace of amusement. It was the month of October, and not all the warm in Bundi. Yet the collar of his shirt was soaked in sweat. He was staring at the ground unblinkingly. The gardener continued to dig. Why was there no sign of the doll? The raucous cry of a peacock made me turn my head for a moment, and in that instant Jayanto made a strange sound. I quickly looked at him. His eyes were bulging. He raised his right hand and pointed at the hole in the ground with a finger that was visibly trembling. Then he asked in a voice turned hoarse with fear, What is that? The spade slipped from the gardener's hand. I too gaped at the ground, open-mouthed in horror, amazement, and disbelief. There lay at our feet, covered in dust, lying flat on the back, a 12-inch long, pure white, perfect little human skeleton.